you spent a lot of your morning watching and considering is what Domonique Foxworth had to say on ESPN earlier today.
Yeah, well, they were talking. It was funny. You know how Get Up does their fun little words. They called them bird heads for not running Derrick Henry enough, and they were talking about it again, about whether they ran Derrick Henry enough, and you could just see Domonique Foxworth biting his lip, waiting for his turn. He was not liking the narrative. Obviously, it started yesterday on Get Up, also with Rex Ryan and Damian Woody, just absolutely taking Greg Roman to just smacking him left and right.
Todd Monken.
Rex Ryan saying, "Whoa, you think you could be a head coach? You're lucky you're an offensive coordinator." I mean, he went hard against Todd Monken, and Domonique Foxworth was not having it this morning.
Your eyes at this.
Because I've been listening to it for a couple of days, and this criticism, there's plenty to criticize.
Hold on, let's rewind that because I want to get a keyword that he was definitely rolling his eyes.
Why are you rolling your eyes at this?
Because I've been listening to it for a couple of days, and this criticism, there's plenty to criticize the Ravens for. Mostly we should be celebrating how the Steelers play, but this particular criticism about Derrick Henry in the fourth quarter to me feels like kind of foolishness. Like they had two drives in the fourth quarter. One was ended by a miraculous interception by Peyton Wilson. The next one ended in a touchdown. So if your argument is we got to give the ball to Derrick Henry more, then all right, Peyton Wilson don't make a miraculous interception, and then the next drive they scored.
You know how
so
you
what are we doing?
Okay,
what are we talking about?
Okay,
so you just got to hand it to Henry 14 times. The 2-point play, fine. I'm with you. We can be critical of them not having him on the field on a 2-point play, but it was clear that they had a 2-point play, and Mike Tomlin outsmarted him by calling a timeout. They gave up their first 2-point play. They went to their backup 2-point play. They seemed confused by it. That was a problem. We can be critical there, but this nonsense that we keep talking about, they got to give Derrick Henry the ball in the fourth quarter. So two drives, one interception, one touchdown. So let's stop it. Just stop it.
Look at the screenshot, Sarah. I picked the screenshot for a reason. Everybody, he's on an island this morning, Domonique was. Yeah. Look at everybody looking at him.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it's a hilarious screen grab, but we don't need to do that for ESPN, correct?
There was game highlights included.
There was game highlights in there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, no, it was. He was like he was getting the high pitched voice in there. Let's just stop it. He's rolling his eyes. I thought it was interesting because the conversation went on. Okay, so first of all, Bobby, you gave the context yesterday after Rex Ryan just annihilated Todd Monken. You gave the context yesterday. We talked about.
Should I repeat it?
Yeah, go ahead. You talked about the penalties nullifying it, and also the fourth quarter.
Yeah, because the way it was set up yesterday for Rex to go scorched earth, it was Derrick Henry got 0 touches in the fourth quarter. Officially, that is true. The one swing pass that was designed for him that went for 15 was called back because of an ineligible man downfield penalty. So that negated 15 yards. That negated the touch for the King. In total, he had 4 touches negated by penalty. So again, it's just part of the context that's necessary for the conversation. And then specifically in the fourth quarter, as we've already discussed, there were just 2 drives for the Ravens. One that ended in the miraculous, as Domonique said, the miraculous interception by Peyton Wilson, grasping it out of, ripping it out of Justice Hill's hands, and then one that went for 10 plays for a touchdown. Yeah, so that's just some of the context.
Mina Kimes gave the same context that a lot of people were retweeting yesterday about the fourth quarter. So, so that was great, and I'm glad that we gave that context yesterday, not completely jumping on with Rex Ryan. And I certainly feel like Todd Monken has been a very good offensive coordinator. Let's not forget. As upset we are with that 2-point play, and as Domonique mentioned, that certainly is valid criticism. But we also can't forget that this is still the number 1 offense, even after that Steelers debacle. This is still the number 1 offense, and it's the number 2 offense in points per game. I think they just, after yesterday, fell behind the Eagles in terms of rushing points per game. But I mean, look at this. Going into that game, total offense number 1, rush offense number 1, pass offense number 3, points per game number 1, third down percentage number 4, fourth down percentage could be better. Red zone offense number 1. Okay, I mean that's and so now they did fall to number 2 in rush offense and number 2 in points, but they're not that far behind. So I don't want to go as far as Rex Ryan did, but there was an interesting part of that conversation that continued, Bobby, that we didn't quite get when Saturday was like, okay, I hear you, Domonique, but there's a pattern here. And I think that's where more of the frustration is coming from, and the fact that it was the Steelers where you're supposed to be out physicaling them. And as we just heard from Riddick, Tomlin relishes and being bullying the bully. And so I think because of that AFC championship game still looming over our heads, and then you put on top of that the Ravens didn't use Derrick Henry very much in that opening game against the Chiefs, right? And then John Harbaugh had the quote that said, well, we didn't bring him in here to have 30 carries per game. And so I think that context is coming up, and or that background is coming up. And so even if there's a legitimate reason in the fourth quarter not to use him, you're still you still have that you still have that background that you're still stewing over. You've got it up here. There's just how many games here where look at these carries where it's less than 20, so the Las Vegas Raiders and Domonique Foxworth argued that if you go to every single game except for the AFC championship game, he said that there was a reasonable reason not to run Derrick enough. I don't know about that opener where he had 13. I don't know about that one. The Cleveland loss, 11. The Pittsburgh loss, obviously 13. Cincinnati, that went in overtime, he only had 15. And again, that was a shootout. So you had 15 against Tampa Bay, 16 again against Cincinnati, 18 against the Raiders. And I think that's just so often that it's not above 20. That when you have all of that background and then you see it against the Steelers, it's like, okay, thanks for the context, but look at the trend. And I think that's more what people are angry about. And so I think the context is fair, and you can do that for every single game. But at some point, when are you going to consistently dictate to the defense that this is our offensive player of the year and we're going to play him right next to our MVP? At some point, you have to be dictating that time and time again, especially if you want to have confidence going into the playoffs. So I still feel like the criticism is valid, even with the context, because it's just happening too often where your identity on offense should be Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And I know there are a lot of mouths to feed. And so it's probably not fun in the beginning of the game to only get 2 yards from Derrick Henry when you have Zay Flowers who can do something, when you have Justice Hill who can break a screen and go for 10, and you have Mark Andrews, and all of that is so hey, we're only getting 2 yards here, I can do better over elsewhere. But if you're playing the long game and you're trying to wear people down, you might still have to have more patience, even though you have these other mouths to feed. This has to be your identity, and you need to dictate it more than you're doing so.
And regardless of the opponent, right? At the bottom of this list here, with this screenshot of Derrick Henry's statistics in the column that's highlighted, sure, Cleveland, Kansas City, and Pittsburgh all have one thing in common: dominant defensive fronts with dominant individual players on each one of them. Myles Garrett, Chris Jones, TJ Watt. But don't let that dictate how much you do or don't utilize this guy. He is your identity, and good things have really happened. Every game's different. The circumstances are different. The in-game scenarios are obviously different, but look at what has gone right when they feed him. Dominate Dallas, despite the collapse in the second half that we all remember. 25 carries. Beat Washington, close contested game, competitive game, 24 carries. Absolutely throttle Buffalo, Sunday Night Football, 24 carries. Thump Denver, 23 carries. Good things happen when you feed him the rock. John Harbaugh was asked about the 2-point play. The 2-point conversion would be game tying. And he said, quote, guys are on the field for specific types of plays. Derrick Henry is a great football player. You want him out there situationally, but he's not out there for every play. So like I said after the game, that's the play that was called. That's the personnel group that it was set up in through a lot of game planning. Sure, there's a lot of game planning. And of course, as Domonique said in a different part of that segment, Sarah, had they converted, we'd be celebrating Monken. We wouldn't even be talking about the fact that the offensive player of the year candidate in Derrick Henry was sidelined. But the fact that he wasn't out there at the very least to be a decoy, at the very least, that his sheer presence alone would change the packages, right? The types of people that are going to be out there on the opposition, right? Pittsburgh would have had to change their personnel if he was out there. It would have had to gone heavier. So,
yeah, from a logical standpoint, I get what Harbaugh is saying. Like, we have personnel packages for certain plays. Okay, we'll get the personnel package out there that has Derrick Henry. You know what I mean?
Yep. Because that dictates what Mike Tomlin and their defensive coordinator has to trot out there.
Right.
Right. If they had taken that opportunity quickly when the timeout came in to shift gears on a dime, get Derrick out there, all of a sudden Pittsburgh's starting to panic because they now have to change and adjust their personnel groupings to reflect the big body presence that is Derrick Henry.
So tell me, I can't remember. Was Derrick Henry out there before they called the timeout for the jump pass? Was he out there for that?
I don't know.
Does
prior to the timeout? I don't know. Yeah,
let us know, chat. Because that would have been a perfect opportunity. To me, it's like you have your go-to play. That's fine, the jump pass. And maybe Derrick Henry isn't a part of that. So they call a timeout. You know why he called the timeout. You absolutely know why he called that timeout. So why not change your personnel? It's a timeout. You have time to do it. So so you have your play, have a backup play with completely different personnel.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because that's why he's calling a timeout. He's trying to get an edge. So be one step ahead. For these 2-point conversions, for these goal to go, like all of them. You know they're going to call a timeout when the game is on the line. So always be ready with the backup. I mean, listen, I'm not on a football team. Is that crazy to change personnel during a timeout? I don't think it is. Let me know.
It's getting cute in a do or die moment. It's getting cute. It's getting finessey, as Jeff Saturday said earlier today on the panel, in a do or die moment. And it just is too familiar, as you kind of alluded to earlier on, for this fan base that's old enough to remember what happened in late January against the Chiefs at the Bank.
Real quick because I don't want to seem like we're going too far. Like I'm not on the Rex Ryan bandwagon. I just want to point out, just that we're all aware, Derrick Henry leads the league in rushing attempts, tied with Saquon Barkley. So as much as I still think, especially, listen, if you're trying to save him for the playoffs, I get it. But especially for games that it's AFC North physical games, those are the games you should be using him most. So you can just absolutely demoralize your AFC North opponent. I'm telling you, with Derrick Henry, nobody in the fourth quarter is going to keep up if you keep running him. Okay. But from a very big picture standpoint, let's not overstate it. He and Saquon Barkley, as they should be, are leading the league with attempts. He is leading the league with rushing yards, and he is leading the league with rushing touchdowns. Yep. So I just want to put that from a big picture standpoint, that we're not totally far off. Okay. But it's in these key games where if you want to be the bully, well, then use your battering ram on offense.
I love me some Rex Ryan, but come on. Don't drag Todd like that and say that he's lucky to be a coordinator. None of this is luck that you're seeing up on the screen right now that you had earlier on, right? Going into week 11, they ranked just about first in every single key category from an offensive unit standpoint. So